Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the beginning guide to my World of Warcraft intro. This is going to be for new or returning players to get an idea as to what they want to do and how they want to proceed in this game. So first of all, you're going to load into this character creation screen, and I immediately back out to the screen here and check what realm I want to be on. There are some for new players, high and low population, PvP or PvE. Now this isn't going to be a super big deal because most services are cross-realm now. However, it is good to at least have an idea as to where you are. Then you're going to come into the character screen here and have the option of picking between the Alliance and Horde. Now on the Alliance side, you can freeze frame if you want to read their specifics, but you have the humans, dwarves, night elves, gnomes, Draenei, Worgen, Pandaren, and Drakthir. Interestingly enough, the Drakthir are a fairly new race, so let's see me test out here if it would let me create one, because this is a trial account. I started up to start with a blank slate and see where it was. Oddly enough, it did let me create one starting at level 10. I'm pretty sure this isn't going to remain. This is something typically you only are allowed to do after reaching certain levels. So maybe it's going based on my full account. However, we do also have allied races you can check out. These will not be unlocked until you have reached level 40 and completed some questing. However, they all begin at level 10, so you get to skip the starting tutorial areas. So that's a good feature to do. I suggest you get one character really moved in before you make a second. That way you can start with the new allied races and use some different racials. Now on the Horde side, we have the Orcs, the Trolls, the Tauren, the Blood Elves, the Goblins, Pandas, Drakthir as well, and the Undead. And then you have your allied races. And the allied races are just different variations of the regular races. Now, almost all of my characters are on the Horde side. That's just where I prefer to be. No specific reasons, really. There's a couple other racials, especially the Tauren, that I enjoy, as I mainly do play tanks. So here we have your classes. The Warrior is a melee DPS and tank. The Hunter is range DPS and potential for melee. Then you have your Mage, which is all range DPS. Rogue, which is entirely melee DPS. Priest, which is either a healer or range DPS. Warlock for range DPS. They also use pets as well as hunters if you're into that. You have your Paladins, which can be either tank, healer, or melee DPS. Druids, which are a pretty special class, as they can do any of the four, healing, tanking, or melee and ranged. Then you have your Shamans, which again have healing, ranged, and melee. Pretty interesting there. Monks have any of the three, healing, tank, or melee DPS. Death Knights can tank or melee DPS, and they have the option for a pet, depending on your specification. Then Blood Elves and Night Elves are the only two options for Demon Hunters, which are tanks and DPS, melee. And finally Drakthir, which are a mid-ranged DPS or healer. So with all that being said, what I would suggest for a first character, if you are getting new into the game, is, as you can see here, if you're highlighting other classes, it tells you what class can be on what races if you want to sort through it this way faster. But for a first character, I would suggest that you come into Tauren or any other class that can do Druid. I prefer Tauren specifically because I tank a lot and their racials benefit that. but I'd suggest a druid as they can do any of the 4 specifications, ranged or melee DPS, as well as healing or tanking. This is good for a first character as you get the opportunity to really kind of explore different options. So then you're going to select here which starting area you want to go in. I believe for your first character that they're both not available. On the right is the original Tauren area, however on the left is where you're going to probably want to be, as it's kind of a fast track area. It'll take you back to your character selection screen, and we'll enter from here.
Soldier.
Skip that cutscene. Once you load in, you won't have quite as much stuff popping up because I have some add-ons to benefit me in different ways, and we'll talk about those in a later video. But kind of get some of the stuff out of the way here and get moving.
Look sharp, recruit.
So this is going to be your starting zone. Just gives you some quick information, things that probably most of you already know, at least if you've played any games on PC ever before. You gotta target these dummies and do some damage to show your action bars and how actions work. Now you can click on them as it tells you to, or what I prefer to do is use the tab key to cycle through opponents.
Fine work. Next week. Rain?
And you'll just turn these quests in as you go. I'm not going to go all the way through the questing. Did have a little bit of lag here for the recording software. I did not have that problem in game. So just try to ignore that.
And strike hard.
Okay, so at this point I've backed out and went ahead and started creation of a Highmaul druid so that I can skip the starting area. Questing is fairly straightforward, so you're going to follow that quest line until you reach level 10 and it drops you off in the capital city. To save time, I am switching to this as this class will start at level 10. And I'm going to come through the starting area for them, which is just one quest that drops me off in the same capital city, as you will see. Here is your specialization. Once you hit level 10, you will be choosing through these. For Druid, you have the Guardian, Restoration, Feral, and Balance. These are your 4 different types. Each one is achieved typically through different transformations. Guardian, which I have selected here, is going to be your tank. Restoration is for healing. Feral is your melee DPS, and Balance is your ranged DPS, spellcasting. The purpose of a tank is to hold aggression so that other people are not being attacked. Healers, of course, keep the group alive, and DPS are to damage the enemies down. You will also then go in, as you see me do here, to talent trees and equip the 1 point you got for achieving level 10. There are many different ways to build talent builds, and I will showcase the builds I use, though they are nothing special. It's just how I prefer to play and what I find that works for me. I will showcase them in later videos specific to each individual class and the specializations that I play. So now that I've teleported to the capital city of Orgrimmar, I am selecting a mount here that you will see me equip to my hotbar, World of Warcraft has changed where you can mount up and fly as soon as you hit level 10, or maybe even as soon as you begin the game, but definitely at level 10. And so I'm going to fly over and turn this quest in, and then go get the actual quest line for allied races to return to Orgrimmar and begin really moving through the game. Now, once you get to this point, you can choose to level in one of 3 ways, or a combination of any such ways. I prefer to tank generally in this game, so dungeon queues for me are very quick, very easy. DPS take a little bit longer to queue for dungeons. However, I feel like dungeons are a very fast, easy way to get experience, so that's how I prefer to level myself. PvP play is not nearly as fast, I don't feel like. However, if you enjoy PvP, player versus player combat, that's another way you could definitely play and level over time. And then the final way would be to continue through quest lines. So over in this corner of the city, you will see this little gnome over here on top of like an hourglass that I'm going to showcase as the talking is finishing up here with the chatting head. So we'll close that, and this gnome right here, if you'll talk to her, she will give you the option to change time zones. World of Warcraft has done this as a way to kind of compress the amount of leveling and expansion packs that they've had. Dragonflight being the most recent, it should be your preset. However, the Lich King and Draenor, Mist of Pandaria are all very good expansions to level in. Fairly small map bases with a lot of quests relatively close together, so questing is very fast in these areas. As well as which time zone you have selected is going to be the basis for what dungeons it queues you into first. So, then we want to talk about gear. So, going into collections here, I have all the heirloom gear. You will not have this immediately available to you, but it is something you can get over time. The main point I want to showcase here is that there are different stats, and the stats that you want to achieve, like you'll see here, these have agility, but grayed out is also intellect. So the armor has agility and intellect available. And which one you want to use is specific to the character that you're using as well as the specialization that you are using. So we'll go to Dungeon Queue here, and you'll see all the options. Now, follower dungeons are very nice if you want to play with AI as your other components, and this gives you the opportunity to try out different roles, learn dungeons, learn your character without being with other people, so that way nobody can say anything about how you're playing. You can kind of just have a leisurely experience. And you'll see there's several different other options here, most of them locked out due to my level. This will change obviously as you level up and get into different content. And your role selection is at the top there. Here's your PvP options. And you can flip through your role selection as well as switching into different specific arenas if you so choose. I believe once you select your role in any of these, you're kind of locked into the specialization that handles that role. So make sure that you've got the one click that you actually want to play. You don't want to be trying to change specializations in the middle of a dungeon or a battleground. Next, we're going to go into edit mode and kind of show you that you can change this AI in vast ways. I have very specific ones saved that I run in my personal account, which I am not using. I'm using a starter account here to showcase things in order to kind of bring everything that I already have set down so that I can open it for the first time in this account to show you. So I prefer my action bars in a 3x3 or 3x4 format. As well, I like to make sure I move my XP bar up to the top. I don't need it down here at the bottom. I feel like it gets in my way if I want my action bars as low and out of the way as possible, but in a spread format. I also then want to use this to go into settings and equip other action bars. I like to have multitudes of these, and I like to use them for different things. One for attacks, one for utility items, even one for like mounts and professions. So we'll get that set up here and move on. Definitely feel free to mess with this UI, mess with your settings. There's a lot in here that can be changed and be very useful. So you'll notice when I switch into bear form, it doesn't have all my abilities anymore. That's because on Druid, each form uses different abilities. So it will auto remove or add them for you based on which ones are specific to which form. And it kind of gives you the freedom to put more things in your action bar and not have them in the way of your other things. Certain abilities, as you see, will activate or deactivate different modes. My action bars also by default are locked. And locked doesn't mean you can't move anything, it just means you're required to hold shift when you move things. So that's something you may want to be aware of. You can either turn this lock off in the settings or just use shift when you need to click and hold to remove or add abilities. Up on these rooftops are some training dummies. This is a good place to mess around if you're interested in seeing how different moves work, what things do and don't affect enemies. So over here you can go into your spell book. There are some spells because I jumped up to level 10 with this hero class. There are some spells for bear form as a tank that I don't have already set. So I'm going to go ahead and equip that. And rearrange my action bar here, add another one in. I have a few extra buttons on the side of my mouse that I like to program, and you have a fast programming option through here when you're in the edit mode. That's pretty useful. So if key binding is very useful if you're good at memorizing where all of your keys are. I am not. I tend to click my abilities. However, that I keybind one or two just for emergency situations. I feel like I'm good at memorizing one or two, but not a whole lot. Fairly average gamer over here, just trying to get some advice and things out there to those of you who may benefit from it. So, get my action bars are sorted out here, and we'll move on into the next item. Alright, now we're on my official account. I'm going to log into my rogue here, as it is the only class I do not have currently fully leveled up. And just check out a couple more things, a little information I wanted to throw at you, and then we will conclude this video as the start of a beginner's guide. So over here again in the time walking spot where you can change what expansion pack you are doing material out of. If you want to go in here, I would highly suggest, if you're going to do any questing, to work in this Draenor area. Once you get so far into the area, you are actually building your own outpost, and the shipyard has an opportunity to get a few heirloom pieces of armor, which is armor that upgrades and levels up with you, so that you're not forced to follow through with it. Something else I recommend very early on in this game is finding a guild. I own and operate the one that you see on screen, so feel free. We are looking for members, so feel free to reach out. I am on quite a lot, so maybe we could get the opportunity to play together. Get on a mount here. Mounts with the dragon riding skill now have certain moves that they are capable of doing as well, so watch that in your action bars. Here is the local bank where you can store things. You also have a regent bank specifically for crafting materials that you can store in here. And then you have a warbands bank, which is transferable between all of your characters.
Don't be a stranger.
There's also a guild bank that I did not showcase in there. Over here we have an auction house. So if you need any materials, bigger bags in order to carry stuff, maybe you got a piece of gear that's just vastly out-geared and you need to get something to replace it because you're feeling a little weak. However, you need to do that. Over here we have an innkeeper and an inn. You can come in here and buy drinks in order to bring your mana up in between combat, food to restore health if you can't heal, a couple different things. There's also an actual innkeeper here you can use to adjust your hearthstone, where it will teleport you upon using. Okay, so final recap here, just pick what character you want to be on which side, Alliance or Horde. Decide what specialization you want to use and how you want to level, whether it be through questing, PvP, or dungeons, or even a combination of the two. I see a lot of people quest and do dungeons together. Then find a guild. Alright, thank you everybody, and also here is the realm that I am listed on if you ever want to find me. See you in the next one.